Institute on Aging is thrilled to have Dr. Ana Chodos, the director of the program that will be featured in today's presentation here at Institute on Aging. And she is an MD and MPH who lives in San Francisco, is a geriatrician and medical director of outpatient geriatric services at the San Francisco Health Network, and an associate professor at UCSF in geriatrics and general internal medicine. She cherishes the opportunity to work with older adults and hear about their lives, and it gives her the energy, inspiration, and hope she needs to work for a better present and imagine a better future, which is what we really need. So I will turn this over to her, and please note that I've put her website in the chat feature for you to look at as well. Okay, Ana, take it away.
Thank you, Caitlin. A kind introduction. Thank you for giving some time and space to this. Really a joy for me, and huge validation and energy towards this project, just to know that, you know, your emails were certainly very kind, but also that people might be interested. So I'm just really grateful that you're all here. I should probably, since we're recording this, caveat that the background is a picture I found on a New York Times article, and I should be crediting the artist. I should modify it to do that. And I wish I knew who the artist was. So forgive me for, you know, blatantly stealing that person's artwork, but it's beautiful. Honestly, for once in my life, I don't have too many slides. I actually have very few slides, and I'm hoping that as ideas come up or ways that you wish to engage with this project come up, feel free to chat or Q&A or bring it out. My goal for today is to talk a little bit about what this is, what 80 over 80 San Francisco is, why I and the people who have now joined are deciding to do this and what we're working towards, and then ways you can get involved. If there's really any content here, it's going to be about ageism, how we can work to dismantle ageism. That is truly the goal, part of the goal of this project. So that's why that's relevant. But other than that, there's not a lot of like clinical information or health information per se. And on the level of community engagement, fighting ageism, fighting the problems that we see because of ageism against older people, I think you guys are often experts as much as me. So would love your thoughts. Plenty of opportunity to engage with this project. And I'm really here on behalf of this project, which is entirely a passion project, not completely unfunded, but not a formal part of my job, that's for sure. So I'm doing this on the side, as it were, and out of love and admiration for the older people in my life and in the city. So let's get started going a little further here. How did this get started? You know, I think there's an obviousness to the play on the whole list making enthusiasm that our culture has, especially for younger, accomplished, quote unquote, you know, accomplished, successful people. And it really, the genesis was simply that why, you know, we see all these 30 under 30s, 40 under 40s, often it's a lot of the same people, but it's clearly a youth or accomplishment, success, validation, and, you know, marketing kind of machine, those sorts of lists. And it was just a personal frustration with that youth loving sort of achievement oriented aspects of our culture that really lead to those sort of lists. That made me think, well, we really need something that really talks about how this city, much like the rest of the country, much like the rest of the world, is aging. So that's really where it came from. But then what is the campaign itself doing? Really a very simple, perhaps embarrassingly simple concept. It's just talking to 80 people over 80, kind of, that's it. And the goal, though, you know, and how to frame this is the wording we came up with. So feel free to get prickly about it. Let me know what you think about it, how you might add terminology, phrasing, wording to this to make it better. But there's really the idea was society has never been as old as it is now. It's going to continue to get older, meaning that our demographic pyramid is going into a demographic column in terms of age structure in society. And that's happening faster in developed nations compared to developing. But San Francisco is right there, right? And this is, of course, people 60 and older. This, all the age cutoffs and stuff really speak to, in some ways, how arbitrary these age cutoffs are in terms of chronologically picking a number and saying everybody over that's older and everybody under that's younger, sure. But this is data from DAS and the Department of Disability and Aging Services and their regular community assessments that they do. And has been, they've been reporting forever, of course, that our city is aging in terms of proportion of people who are in the older age groups, and they serve people 60 and older. So that is, of course, their cutoff. But I thought that this idea of 80 over 80 could be a great way to message to people older and not, younger and not, whatever, wherever you are on the age spectrum, that, hey, the structure, the feeling, the reality of our society is changing because more people will be in older age groups. What does that mean? It can't be meaningless, right? It doesn't obviously mean certain things. That's where we get into stereotypes or knee-jerk reactions about what it means that there are more older people, but it does mean that things are changing. And so it's a way to highlight that and to highlight a conversation about it. So I've really framed it, and in talking to people about the project, this is how I came to this place was, we're just celebrating 80 people, 80 and older, because that marker of being 80 and older is a place where, it's sort of remarkable how many people 80 and older we have. And okay, so we have a comment here in the, and someone has raised their hand. So I'm going to start to get to that. So someone asks, what do people prefer to be called? And do they buy into the Reframing Aging Style Guide? So do they like to be called older adult, older people, seniors, elders? Wow, we actually never asked people what they prefer to be called and didn't necessarily call them anything. Asked them to talk about what they're just to disclose their age. And then we asked them some other questions. I'm actually going to show you the questions that we go through with people later. But you bring up a wonderful question, precisely why I have my pen ready. Maybe we should just ask people if they have a preference, because I know surveys kind of go back and forth, and you'll go somewhere and there will be a very prideful way of saying, hey, this is our senior center, this is our senior whatever group. And people aren't really hung up on that term. Whereas in medicine, we're very aggressive about ensuring that everybody calls people older adult, as to emphasize like a comparative relationship, not necessarily in a relative relationship, not necessarily a cutoff, because we don't want to just feed into people's ideas. I'm not sure that works. I'm just saying that's what we do. Fabulous. So that was really good. And then Erica, you raised your hand. So let me see if I can quote unquote allow you to speak, which is feels like a big responsibility. I don't know if you can do that. There she is. Okay. Mic pointer, there we go. Erica, can you speak? It says, do you have a question?
No, I'm sorry, I don't at this time. I'll get back to you later though.
Okay, great. So here we go. Oops. So the other thing is we didn't want to like emphasize any specific criteria other than you are just in the I'm older age group. And I'm 80 or older. So, but we did want to make sure that we are getting a adequate representation of who's in San Francisco. I think that was another reason, like a lot of people, obviously Betty Reed Soskin's in the East Bay. There's a lot of like famous older people in the area that everyone kind of knows about, and it might bring some cachet, some glitter to the project. But I think two values sort of infused the selection process. Three. One is wanted to focus on just everyone. So it's the fact that you're 80 over 80 is already an extraordinary, that your 80s already or older is already extraordinary. So that's enough. But we do want to make sure to sample a diversity of folks, not necessarily in a mathematical way, a direct representation on a mathematical level of like, or statistical level of who's in the city, but to be sure to highlight the diversity. And that was our hope. I'm not saying we've accomplished that yet. And then I would say the other criterion, which is really key, was available, willing to talk to us, and actually nominated. So it's not like we actually had an outpouring of people. So it really became a practical matter. And it turns out talking to anyone is fun. So we've had a really great experience just with the people we've talked to so far. And I'm going to go over a little bit more as well, like who we talked to, who we've been able to talk to. Let's see. So again, as I mentioned, sorry, I was also learning how to record my computer screen, and it's a useful tool. You can get a extension on your browser to do this. But again, I remember the day I thought about doing this project, because I came home and my husband had gotten like piles of magazines from like cashing in some miles that were going to expire, and 3 of them in the same week were like a 40 under 40, a 30 under 30 type of list. And I just kind of snapped. I was like, I don't really care anymore about who's doing a great job. And I know that's a cynical, ageist against younger people perspective on my part, but I was like, I want to see more older people represented and highlighted in a way that is meaningful. Just that was sort of the genesis. And again, kind of simple, to be honest, I think from my perspective. But like, why is this important, and why is it important now? I do think that ageism is really active. And this was from Ashton Applewhite's This Chair Rocks book, as well as her website. But it's not the ageism I'm talking about, by definition just means discrimination based on age, which we can all appreciate. But the concept I'm getting at here, or the phenomenon that is bothersome to me, is just the discrimination based on age at older ages that really sidelines and silences older people. And that really speaks to me, because I feel that reflects the reality and the truth that I see sometimes working, trying to serve older people as a healthcare provider, or often as a connection to community resources person in the work that I do, just trying to make people's lives better. And I think, I know that most of us can sort of resonate with the fact that when we're out there and we see media, TV, podcasts, movies, whatever, it just doesn't seem like older adults are the protagonists that they should be. So the other hope for this project is that it's a place to start for a conversation, maybe sparks a little interest in everyone in the city about like, oh yeah, what is our city doing right for its older residents? It does a lot of things right, of course. Institute on Aging is a big part of that. But what are the things that could be better? And can we reflect on the fact that our age structure is changing? And that means we're going to have a lot more neighbors who are in their older years. So the solution here is just 80 other voices, 80 other stories, thoughts, ideas, moments of their lives that reflect the complexity, the joys, the challenges of living in your 80s, and how we can pay attention to that, and just putting that out there. So one example is, now that we have a fair number of people we've talked to, we're starting to put together little Instagram posts and little moments, if you will, that we're shooting out there on our Instagram account and Twitter to try to just, get little nibbles and get more, again, pictures and reflections and moments of older adult lives that people can engage with and see. And I do think that simply not seeing that sidelining of older people is something that hopefully this project can address a little bit. Erica, just one comment, since you're the raising hand thing it keeps going off. You just let me know via chat if you actually do want to say something. I'll just say that. The other thing is clearly an inspiration and something I've always looked towards. I was so excited when it first came out, was the End Ageism campaign that I know is a mostly maintained and put out there by DAS as well. And just looked so beautiful, so well done. Like these incredible ads that they had, you know, and the buttons of, you know, age, whatever, creativity never gets old, courage never gets old, like, and the connection of these beautiful pictures of people across the age spectrum, and like the way this just so explicitly connects us as people to other people of all ages, including ourselves, that whole aspect and weirdness about ageism, that this is something that may potentially affect us all if we get older, or in any way experience ageism. You know, that obviously can happen at any age, especially if you're on Instagram. Everybody, of course, thinks like anything over 25 is super old. But I was really inspired by this. And so it's just, it's honestly just trying to like animate some of these pictures, right? And get the voice, the sound out there of older adult voices. And I know that DAS has a lot on its plate these days. And so End Ageism isn't quite as active as it was a few years ago. But that's one thing. And then another just plug for like, why is visibility an issue? So as, oh shoot, I think I did accidentally leave out a slide. Caitlin brought it up, but Ashton Applewhite, who wrote This Chair Rocks, is a great resource, and her and a community of activists with her have created Old School, spelled the right way, SCHOOL, Old School Clearinghouse. And it's a clearinghouse, it's a gathering place for anti-ageism resources. And I plug it because I found this article through them. I often go there to look for resources like how to do a better job messaging, you know, against ageism and things like that, or scanning anything you're working on to reduce the ageist bias in it, which is shockingly sometimes hard to do. So what I found was a link to something that just, you know, validated. This was written in 2019 by one of their reporters at the Times. This is from the New York Times, but it was to highlight an AARP Getty Images partnership to put more diverse and just more images of older adults out there. And what I just thought was kind of funny, and I don't know what you reflect on when you see this, but so the article was about that, you know, older adults are currently very ignored in marketing, media, things like that, and that it's often ageist when it's out there. And this was the #1 most popular Getty image of seniors. And I actually really like the photo. You know, it's great. It shows, you know, activity, and community. It's very white, obviously very female, or female appearing. But I just, it's funny. It just strikes me as really odd that this is the most popular photo. And it wasn't immediately obvious to me why. There was no content in the article to explain why either. And so it had me kind of scratching my head and thinking a little bit about what people are looking for when they Google seniors. They're not looking for people with walkers or wheelchairs, which are some of the stereotypes, right? That all older adults are mobility impaired or, you know, dealing with disability or something. So maybe this spoke to people always looking for positive aging images. I wasn't quite sure. And Caitlin has posted the Old School link, which is great. Great. So just some communication in the chat there. And then I think the other thing that makes ageism not a trivial issue, and the thing that really does motivate me to get this project, to continue to get it going, and to get specifically even your input on what could make it better if you have ideas, is I really do feel like I see direct harms all the time in medicine. And I know that's a very limited view. It just happens to be where I'm working every day. But this was, it's a bit of like I just happened to find this graphic, but I do think it makes a good point. I mean, unfortunately, what we presume is the older patient is looking pretty down. But the thing that I think is increasingly evidence-based, at least in medicine, is that when you have ageist structural issues in the healthcare system, which I think I could argue for quite a while that there are many issues with just the structure of our healthcare system in terms of how age-friendly it is. But when you're surrounded by ageist providers, which is highly likely, given that most people unfortunately do have negative stereotypes against older adults, regardless of their intentions or their underlying core values, it's just ageism is very ingrained. When you sort of do those implicit biases tests, things like that, people end up being way more ageist than they expect. But in medicine, I really do feel like I see daily harms. And it's both so this particular graphic is, insofar as the words that are present on this slide here, are really pointing to the underdiagnosis, undertreatment of things because of age. And I think, what we all know is that because older people may have more physical ailments or more medical conditions overall, which is certainly true as a population, a lot of things get ignored or not necessarily treated as aggressively as they could be, not, or should be, because of age, right? Like, okay, yeah, sure, you're fatigued. I'm just going to chalk that up to older age, or, oh, you're having trouble, managing as many things cognitively as you could before. I'm just going to chalk that up to age, things like that. So knowing that that's happening, I think there's obviously so many missed opportunities to promote wellness and well-being and, adequate and appropriate medical care. On the other hand, we also know older adults are overtreated, so they're always assumed to have the worst of everything, right? So if a 30-year-old comes in with chest pain, maybe the first thought is, oh, they're having a panic attack or severe heartburn after their barbecue meal. If it's an 80-year-old, they're assumed to be having a heart attack, and they're checked accordingly. So, but what happens is we apply, based on pattern recognition, diagnostic tests, treatments very differently. And it's just, we miss the mark a lot more with older people, and we cause a lot more harm, both by undertreating and overtreating. So for me, there is an imperative for the larger community to engage with a better conversation about how we relate to, value, treat people in the older age groups versus in my professional life, I feel like it's also incredibly urgent. So it's both of these things really keep me very motivated. Okay, Erica, feel free. I can open up your mic if you wish, but we have a question here is about safety. San Francisco apartments have many stairs, hills, and bad pavement, and this is a barrier for elders to stay at home safely. And is this issue addressed? So we do have a question I'll show you later, asking people what could make San Francisco better. And I was actually trying to pull out from people a little bit that issue, like what are some of the literal physical barriers and problems that people are seeing that affect their experience in this city now that they're older. And frankly, not a lot of people brought it up. So I'm not, again, this isn't necessarily a research project from the outset. I think at some point, hopefully we can highlight stuff like that regardless through the project, on the website, things like that. But not a lot of people have spontaneously brought that up. They definitely bring up transportation, and they definitely bring up neighborhood safety and concern for other residents. I think in the times, particularly around the issue of increased visibility and concern about people who aren't housed. I think that is a big thing that just tons of people brought up as something that they really hoped would be better in the future. And that doesn't really have a lot to do with aging at all, or themselves being an older person. And then Caitlin put in the chat that Ashton Applewhite says that sometimes organizations serve older adults can be the most ageist of all. Yes. And this is something, and I mean it like so sincerely. If as I'm presenting this, or you're looking at our website, or you're just hearing, looking at the materials, anything that you want to call us out on, we are more than happy to, I am more than happy to hear it specifically, because I want us to be better. And then wonderful, there's a link to a CNN article about health and age discrimination. I don't know, was that, the KHN part? I thought it was Judith Graham's article maybe, but, or someone else's, but Judith Graham has been doing a lot of great, incredible writing about this lately also. She's a great writer at Kaiser Health News. So I think this brings up a question though, when, I'm trying to talk about ageism, let's not discriminate on age, like, well, okay, but we're emphasizing 80 and older. Is that an issue? There's always issues with cutoffs, and we certainly know that chronological age is both a very real thing. It's pretty physical in terms of, the time-space continuum. Not a lot we can do about that as human beings, or at least yet. So time ticks along, and it certainly means something. But certainly as a medical person, it doesn't necessarily mean that much to me about how that person's actually doing or what they're capable of or anything like that. I still need to know all those specifics about anyone. So that doesn't change no matter what age you are. But I'll tell you why I chose 80, even though it means we had to talk to, obviously for symmetry, 80 people over 80. And that turned out to be way more people than I thought. I thought it's just taking a very long time. So I learned my lesson there, but I do not regret it. The reason is, I think, from my perspective, there is so much ageism, frankly, and there's so much positive aging kind of stuff out there that really pushes a narrative of people not honestly agreeing that people in their 50s, 60s, 70s are older. Right, AARP wants to push it down so they can increase their membership and create more community, I think, and more proactive engagement with their organization at younger ages. But I talk to a lot of people in their 60s and 70s who really absolutely do not identify themselves as older. And I'm not invested in them doing so, but I do think that once people are in their 80s, there is more of a recognition and frankly, a self-acceptance. And I know this is a bold, potentially out of bounds thing for me to say, but I do think people are more willing to accept a identity as an older person and engage with a project that would have that partly as its mission to highlight life in the later years. We did get referred one person in their 90s who was very clear that he did not want anything to do with anything that had anything to do with saying aging, older, whatever. He felt like going down that road was a way to decline. And he had a lot of very strong gut and visceral reaction to me talking about this project with him. And he did not identify with it at all. And that was probably the only person who had that kind of reaction, but it was enough. Obviously he was in his 90s that I realized it probably didn't matter what age cutoff I chose. But I do think that both externally and internally, people are more comfortable with an identification as an older person or in the older age groups when you're in your 80s or above, as opposed to 70s or 60s or something like that. And I do think that there is such a tension between over-identifying, labeling people as some older because of a specific chronologic age, when we know doesn't necessarily mean much either internally for the person or externally, practically for their health necessarily. But I do, it was one way to define this project. And so I think I can defend it from the standpoint of, at least demographically, we know this is an important transition for society. And it's not trivial, it's not irrelevant. It's just not everything. And that's part of the discussion. Like, how can we have a broader, more robust vision and view of everyone in their older years, and add to the complexity of understanding elderhood for all of its diversity, age and otherwise. So that's my defense, and you are hereby invited to bring me down. So I will leave that there, and maybe we can get a little more into it in the discussion. But I think all along we've really wanted to be clear. And so this is the question list. Feel free to run your eyes over it and tell me what you think. There are a few things in recruiting. So we just reached out to friends, organizations, people who are interested, people who work in this space. Please let us know if you have anybody you think would be good to talk to. All we care about is that they're 80 or older. And in fact, I kept saying, we're looking for people who don't speak English. We're looking for, any diversity is a plus, not a minus, meaning like, whatever neighborhood they're from, whatever background. We reached out to organizations that specifically serve older adults who identify as LGBTQ or Asian or African American, like groups that serve those communities. And of course, I think people knee-jerk, totally understandably, refer people who are doing really well or doing really cool things. So out there really engaged in whatever way or still really active. But I did really put in a consistent plug to say, really interested in just talking to regular people, because another problem, and everyone who's on, I'm going to go over like how to recommend somebody, how to contact me, how to sign up right at the end. So don't worry about that. I'll give you lots of information. The website is there as well. Okay. And another thing, which is very true, is people who have reached out. Sometimes people are sick when we reach out to them, or it's clear they don't totally understand what we're talking about. So those are people we didn't include, either for practical reasons, they couldn't participate because they were ill, or some did pass away between being referred and then us trying to reach out. Only one person who we actually did profile in the last 2 years, so this has been going on for about 2.5 years now, is only one person that we know of has passed away. So we're doing another round of reaching out to everybody, make sure they know that the project is starting to come to a close. And having said that, if you have more people you'd like to refer, we are going to be reaching out really soon. Omicron has obviously put a little bit of a kink in the works, but we are really trying to reach out as soon as possible because we're going to wrap up by May, which I'll go over in just a second. And so what people can expect if you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm going to refer you to this project, again, we're not really looking to reinforce this idea of there's super agers out there. Look at all, the only thing you need to know about the 80s and older is that many of them are running businesses and they're media moguls and they're learning to fly jet planes. Like, I have no problem. I'd love to talk to somebody who's doing all those things, but that's not the focus. It's not about the 30 under 30 focus, of course, is like the super achievers. I have a gajillion followers on TikTok and I run many media companies. Great. That's great for them. And that's that achievement focused lens. That's not the lens we're going for here. And in part, again, it's just to bring up and to buoy and to promote the voices of older adults with the simple concept that, getting to 80 is an extraordinary thing. And what does life look like at that point and after? We're also not doing a full life review. So that's a beautiful thing. I wish I could do that, but we're not saying, hey, tell me about your childhood. Let's go through every year of your schooling, what did your family end up looking like, or your young adult years? What are you doing now? Like, that's not what it is. It's just kind of a conversation and trying to get a little bit of a snapshot of life now, because the issue is really what is life like for 80-year-olds now? and 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds. We don't have anybody in their hundreds yet. And so just these are sort of the questions we're going through. And also tying it to place. So like really tying it a little bit to San Francisco, because that's the boundary we drew. So the age boundary and the place boundary, to try and understand a little bit, people's experience of San Francisco, because the other slightly hidden agenda would be, are there things about San Francisco that could really be better for an age friendly towards older people that would come out of this? So I think that was part of it. Sorry, and then the point about it not being overly curated was just a lot of it, if we got a referral and the person answered our phone calls and we could make a date to talk to them, that was kind of good enough. Especially initially, we weren't over curating who we were including in the project. Now we are much closer to the end, and so we sort of are trying to round it out a little bit, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So as I mentioned, it did start before the pandemic, which at this point not only feels like a couple of years ago, it feels like an entire lifetime ago. So I've definitely aged with this project in very meaningful ways. And I'm saying it out loud, so it must be true. We are planning to end by May 2022. That's Older Americans Month. We're going to do this. We're going to get it out there. And what we're going to do is we have some written profiles, which I believe she's still on. Judy Goddess participated, writer, editor of SF Senior Beat, and did some beautiful written profiles of a few folks. Most people we have either audio, like that was only a handful, and now we really truly mostly have just audio or video. Some of it is video. The power of the iPhone is incredible. And some of it is just regular audio. Some people did not want video, totally understandably. And what we're doing is we're going to edit that, make it digestible, listenable, watchable, whatever the case, put it all on the website to create a place where people can go and engage with the stories however they wish. We are trying to partner with radio station to put some of the stories on for the month of May as well, and making a book specifically for the participants so that they have something a little more concrete to appreciate about their contribution to this project. But we'll hope to make that more widely available if we have some funding, of course. We have to work on that. And then my initial, I'll tell you what my first two thoughts about the entire project was, oh yes, get to talk to 80 people over 80, really like show the city how great it is to have these older neighbors and residents and all the wonderful ways that, all of what that means, right? And bring more voices and pictures of older people to everyone in SF. And then I was like, we're gonna have a lot of parties. We're gonna have lots of events, and we're just popping champagne, and Martinelli's all over the place, and just really celebrating these incredible people and bringing even more older people from, that neighborhood or district together and get the soups involved. Obviously megalomaniacal dreams completely. And that was also very clearly 2019, before gathering was not, potentially fatal event for everyone. So who knows, pre-Omicron, I even thought, well, maybe it would be possible because it's taken us so long to get this all done. I don't know. I don't think so. But we'll find ways to do proper celebrations, I hope, and partner with community organizations. So how far have we gotten? So yes, took a long time. Remember, volunteer effort, nights and weekends kind of thing. And so far we have truly 69 participants, but I would say who we've recorded or profiled in some way. I would say we have to go back and make sure everyone's still okay with us using the material, as a lot of time has passed. And that turns out some of our recordings during Zoom era, pandemic era, were very acceptable quality. I think now as we're coming out of it, some of the quality is not great. So we're having to redo some of them, and it's possible not all those will get done. So looking for another 10 to 15 people to make sure that we can sort of round out this cohort. This may not be a perfect accounting. And sorry, this is a typo. It's not one. It was meant to be the sum of all these, which would be 15. Sorry, 13. Okay, nor can I add. But we do have people who are non-English speaking. That's actually a big editing and presentation challenge because sadly, we really do probably need to put it all into some English form. So we're working on that in terms of getting funding for that and things like, and translators who are available or interpreters who can do that work, voiceover work, things like that. But we have one person was recorded in Mandarin, and we of course had volunteer interviewers who were language concordant, 8 in Cantonese. So huge shout out to the organization that helped us with that. 3 who are Spanish speaking and 1 Russian speaking. 43 are women, so definitely over half. That is actually somewhat a fair representation of gender differences in the older age groups, but looking for some more men. 4 people willingly self-identify as LGBTQ, part of that community. 8 African-American, 4 Latinx, and 16 not Asian. Sorry for all the typos on this. So somewhat well-rounded in terms of diversity, but I think really these last 12 to 15 folks, we're going to try pretty hard to round out in terms of language, racial and ethnic background, because I would like to really point out as a community, many of our oldest residents are foreign born from Asia, including from the Filipino community. And we don't really have anybody from that group. So working on that. However, we do have a wonderful list, and we did have, thank goodness, a little bit of funding to work with an editor who was able, this video is on the website. So you may have seen it if you've been tooling around on the website since we started this presentation, but I'll just show you a video, and it has some of the clips of our participants. And I'm sorry I don't have more, but this is about a 3-minute video. So I'll play it now. And Caitlin, if you'd be so kind as to interrupt if for some reason the sound is not going through, but it should.
My name is Dorothy G.C. Kwok.
I'm Judy Gavis. I'm 83 years old.
Edward Green, 90 full years.
Carolyn Jean Bone Chris, and I'm 84.
I'm a friendly person. I like people.
Smart, critical, cranky, kind.
I'm very curious about things.
I'm really enjoying when I turned 80, I had 7 birthday parties, and I thought, oh, this is great. I really like being in 80 land, and I really enjoyed it.
I have sketchbooks full of ideas. Once upon a time on a very narrow line, there lived the porcupine, feeling mighty fine.
I'm a happy San Franciscan, usually.
Well, I like living in San Francisco because generally it's senior friendly in many of the services, but it can be better.
I mean, I'm good one-on-one with people, but I'm not good in a crowd because I don't do small talk very well.
The thing that I keep saying to myself is attention must be paid to older people who are not leading dramatic lives.
My husband proposed me and he said that I love you, I like you. I was very happy.
I always refer myself as Chinese because I am Chinese, but then I'm also very American in thinking.
I'll tell you what I like to be remembered as. Someone who cared about other people and did something about it.
My mother always said, Your problem is you see all these things you want to do. Just focus on one. And I can't do it. Can't. It's just too rich out there.
Life can be very difficult, very demanding, but there's also this quality of possibility and excitement and coming together with other people. And so I love life.
I think it's wise to know that you have to take care of yourself in the future, but enjoy as much as you can now. Don't lose now because of yesterday and tomorrow.
And keep a very inquisitive mind.
Getting old is not easy, but given the alternative,
One of the most defining moments of my life. Well, there have been so many. There you go. That's Blackberry Blossom.
My name.
Sorry. And by the way, I did see in the chat, Carmen, I want to thank you for your recommendation. And yeah, I thank you for watching that. It just gives you a sense. So I think if we can imagine the final product, I do hope that we have enough manpower, energy, and skill to collate some things into some themes, things like that. Maybe there'll be some videos up or some audio opportunities that are just on topics that everyone touches on, for example, that are sort of more theme oriented. But the basic vision is everyone who's participated will have something up, that they're okay with, either photo, video, or just the profile that speaks to their experience and some of what we learned from talking to them. And that there will be 80 total. And hopefully we'll have the bandwidth to do more videos and things like that are more compilation and very well edited. We got lucky with that one. So who's doing this? We're very largely volunteer. We do have a steering committee, and we have a whole our team page on the website, which you can look at. And I think I just wanted to give you a sense, and of course to acknowledge some of the incredible people who've worked on it. But Marie Jobling, who's at Community Living Campaign, has really sponsored this project throughout, really made sure it was standing on some foundation of stability, let a lot of her staff have time to help us. So has been really enabler number one. Have to say, Judy Goddess, who introduced herself in the last video, was also a very early enabler, really heavy contributor. And I think she said it best of all, and I keep not wanting to totally steal the line. I may need to get formal permission, but the issue of attention being paid to older people, I think, was a really driving and inspiring force behind this whole thing. So also, I consider sort of everyone who's volunteered to interview, to talk, part of the project, and has kind of contributed in all these ways I don't think I ever would have anticipated. We have a volunteer project manager, Noelle, who is herself a caregiver to her father, who's in his mid-80s and is living with a neurodegenerative disease and needs a lot of care. So she's very personally connected to the issue. Tracy Ramos, who is a website designer, has really helped us with the website, and she's part of Community Connectors and got connected to her through the Inner Sunset version of that group. Julia is our audio editor and was our connection to KLW, who they'll hopefully have some bandwidth to support us for the launch in May. And then folks like Victoria is a recent addition, hopefully a future medical school attendee and current LinkedIn employee, who volunteers her time to help us with the social media and promotion. So this is as I'm sure you guys have all been in these positions, when you're trying to do things, it comes together with the goodwill and energy of people who come out of the woodwork, thank goodness. And so where are we now? As I mentioned, we're sort of have a clear target of getting to 80, but trying to overshoot that a little bit to make sure we have some wiggle room if anybody wants to drop out or we end up not being able to use their material. I think we will, of course, find a way to celebrate that person regardless, but we need to at least get to 80. So we need at least 11 more people. And so on the website, there is a tab where you can recommend. And so you could always go there and fill out the form, and it's pretty simple and comes to my email. But you could always just email one of these. So we have one for the website, which is on one for the project, which is on the website. And then you can always email me personally. I certainly don't mind, would love it. You can follow our socials on Twitter and Instagram with the obvious handle of 80/80SF. And then we are going to have to do another push to actually finish this project properly. But we did some fundraising over the holidays, Giving Tuesday and all of that. And we're still working on it. So we do have a GoFundMe page, and we've done, you shouldn't expect anything. And so I feel like we did great, but there's always some room for some additional support. And then if you have a particular skill or a particular interest or a particular way you want to engage with this project, please open up that conversation with me, again, through any of these emails. And I thought I might have another slide, but I don't. So I'll leave it there. And a reminder that Caitlin put in the chat that you can get CEU if you want, but you have to fill out her survey.
I also want to invite, since we have just a couple of moments left, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat or the Q&A feature.